As Kathy mentioned, I'm an engineer, and by training, I apply science on a daily basis. That's my profession. So I like to understand how the world works. I have to understand how the world works. I'm liable for making sure it works properly. And recently, there's been talk about a coal mine in our hometown. And visceral reaction, why would we want that here? But as an engineer, I wanted to understand, well, how is coal a part of my life? So I did some basic research and confirmed some understandings because I've worked in metallurgy. There's 3 basic kinds of coal. There's more, but just to keep it simple, the kind of the top grade, anthracite or metallurgical grade coal, coking coal. This is for steel making. It doesn't get burned. It is the carbon input for steel. The second kind, and I didn't know about this kind. I knew about metallurgical grade coal, but I didn't know about high quality thermal coal. It's used to make cement, which is a key ingredient in concrete. And all of the cement in North America is made in kilns that burn high-grade thermal coal. And then there's the other kind of coal, the kind that they get out of Alberta, where they scrape the prairie off and it's just sitting there. It's low grade, high sulfur. They use it for power production. In these 3 general categories, there are several other kinds. This is coal. So then I was wondering, well, okay, coal goes into steel, coal goes into concrete. Those are all parts of our lives. How much are we responsible for in the Comox Valley? So I did a bit of research. I used Stats Canada. I looked at our domestic market that tracks how much we consume. And I found out that in the Comox Valley, we are responsible for consuming 29,000. You can see the number up there. It's a staggering amount. That's tons, thousands of kilograms of steel. And to make that steel, the way steel is made in most of the world, you need 16,000 tons of coking coal. That's what we are responsible for in the Comox Valley. And then the second one, well, cement. Well, I found out that in Canada, 21.8 million cubic meters of concrete are made every year. That's 1 cubic meter per Canadian. So there's 65,000 people in the Comox Valley. That's 65,000 cubic meters of concrete. So doing some quick math, and this was kind of rough, but I'm an engineer, I hope you trust me. We need a cement plant that's 177,000 square meters. That's 17 hectares. And to dry the cement, we need 178 tons a year of thermal coal. And that's not all the coal we're responsible for, but for steel and for concrete, that's what we consume. So this led me to another path. Well, what is our industrial consumption? Because we don't have a lot of industry in the Comox Valley, but we consume a lot of products. So we've talked about steel, and I did a bit of research. I found out, well, if we had a steel plant, it would be 46,000 square feet. We'd have 30 full-time employees. And the Raven mine, if it can produce the coal they say it can produce, would supply our needs for steel without growth for 878 years. That's not bad. For cars, and we all know there's 1,200 new cars in the valley. I figure 500 of them are probably new. And if you look at the number of car dealerships and how many they have to sell to stay in business, that's not an unrealistic figure. Well, we need a car plant that's 562,000 square feet with 30 employees operating full-time to make our 500 cars. So what else do we consume? How about oil and gasoline? Well, the average BC driver, we're not bad, 12,500 kilometers. It's way lower than the 25,000 number people spout around. I researched the average vehicle. I looked at average fleet fuel consumption from, I think, about 2003 through 2010. Well, if we all drive average vehicles and we're average drivers, that's 1,300 liters per person per year. You do the math, it's staggering. 73 million liters of gasoline just driving around. To get that gasoline, it's 2,500 barrels of oil a day. And the last time I checked, there isn't a single oil well in the Comox Valley. So I did some research into oil wells, and I said, what's an average oil well? The one we're used to seeing, the one with the pumper. How many of those do we need? Well, it turns out we need 315. It's not just the pumper. There's pipes, there's other pumps, there's tanks, there's storage. You're talking a half acre for one of these. That's 150 acres. That's big. That's a big oil field. And then we need a refinery, because you can't just use crude oil. It's not very useful in its native state. So a 15.3 acre refinery, hopefully that does everything we need with that oil for all of our consumption. So how big is that? Well, here's the numbers. 0.43 hectare for a steel plant, 17.8 hectares of cement plant, that's including a bit of quarry, thankfully, a 6-hectare oil refinery, a 5-hectare car plant, 60 hectares of oil wells. And this still isn't all of our consumption, and we're already at 221 acres of just industry. Well, how big is that? Well, here's the Comox Valley. That blue square, that's 55 hectares. Well, here's our oil field. Not quite, but close. The next blue square, doesn't show up very well, right there, that's 16 hectares. Well, there's our cement plant. And I threw in these 2 little red squares. Those are about 5 hectares each. So that's our oil refinery and our car plant. Just to give you the scale, the field sawmill site is only 4 hectares. That's the scale, and that's still not all of it. So here's the stats. Yeah, you're not going to read that, but this is our consumption. This is our apparent domestic market according to Stats Canada. And we already covered the oil refinery, we talked about the car plant, we've talked about the steel mill. We haven't talked about everything else. So doing a really quick comparison, saying, well, the average area per industrial output in dollars, that's what we need, another 27 hectares of industrial park. So we're totaling 116 hectares. Most of that's factory. And let's remember, the field sawmill site is 4 hectares. And that's not including power production, that's not including mines, because we're going to need an iron mine to make steel, a copper mine, we're going to need an aluminum mine, we're going to need somewhere to get silicone to make glass. And the average is $17,000 per person in the Comox Valley per year. And you think, oh, I don't spend that much, but it's not just the money you spend. It's the money our governments spend on infrastructure. That's a part of it. It's the money BC Hydro spends upgrading their infrastructure because we're ratepayers to BC Hydro. It's the money we pay Shaw Cable and TELUS, and they build infrastructure. It all adds up to that number per person across Canada, actually. So if not here, where is this industry? Well, most of it is in the United States and China. They're pretty even now for industrial output. For coal, China's the top producer of all coal. In Canada, we're not even top 5, and China is the top producer by several orders of magnitude. Steel, same thing. Steel is also made in the United States, Brazil, but really China, again, is the big producer. China with its history of human rights abuses. China, which doesn't have comparable labor laws or environmental protection to us. And that's where we're outsourcing an awful lot of this production. Here's some, these are staggering figures I found. This was a really easy web search. I mean, the one that really blows my mind, right here. Percent of Chinese goods sent to the US that go to Walmart, 9%. 9% of the entire industrial output, and that's, I don't even know what kind of number this is, $1,480.58 billion US dollars. 9% of that goes to Walmart. It's not made in the United States. Everyone has shoes, everyone's got an umbrella, we all use buttons, but they're not made here. They're made in China. That's what China looks like today. Doesn't look a lot like our valley. So what's the root cause of this? That's the next question I had to ask. I know what the industry is, I know what our consumption is, I know where it happens. What's the root cause? Well, we've talked about it. It's your cars, your TVs, your stereos, everything we buy. It's not just the products. It's the factories they're made in. It's the raw materials that have to be harvested, reduced, and refined to make them. It's the vehicles, the ships, the trucks, the trains that transport them. It's the factories that make the packaging that they come in. It all adds up. And that's what all that industry is feeding. Very little of it is actually like primary necessity. Very little. I didn't have time to dig up all the statistics on what our global priorities are, but they're very skewed. Oh, that's not what I want to do. So how do we change? We stop shopping. And I say we, I mean we, in Canada, in North America, in Europe. This pie chart tells the story. 20%, and we are all, everyone in this room is in the top 20% of income earners in the world. And we are consuming over 76% of the world's resources. That's us. So at the end of the day, I am left with a bit of a moral dilemma. So if we consume and we're responsible for this industrial output, what right do we have to say no to industrial impacts? What moral right do we have if we're creating that? Why does someone in China or the United States deserve that environmental and industrial impact more than us? Why are we better? Thank you.